good job with more pay, you're okay. Money, it's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands and make a stash. New car, caviar, 4-star daydream. Think I'll buy me a football team. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, and not only Andrew Richter, but Andrew Richter in the flesh.
That's right.
Well, you know what we mean. Anyway,
6 feet from you, right?
Yes.
I think we're 5 3/4.
And now that you're here, we can discuss why you were gone. Because we had to get you back out of communist China. We had you on site discovering multiple secrets here about the coronavirus and China's role in covering it up. So
Jay,
it's good.
It's the commitment that we give to our audience, the lengths we will go.
Yes.
I was detained in communist China. Secretary Pompeo spent many nights negotiating my return.
Yes.
So
he did a good job.
He did. I mean, I thanked him and the president. We all had a virtual lunch today, Trump gave me his credit card. He paid for everything.
Oh, that's good.
So yeah. So I mean, it was a good deal. China, not a fun place to go. So I was able to communicate. I snuck in some communication devices underneath my eyelids and in the back of my patellas. I was holding them, so that's how we were able to talk through all that in my underground lair that I mentioned over the last couple of weeks. So, yes, it is good on American soil.
Yes.
Thank you to the President, the Secretary of State, for rescuing me. I was on a mission. Mission not accomplished.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not accomplished. I mean, I was determined to find the where the outbreak occurred.
Mm-hmm.
I did tremendous studying for this, Jay.
Yes.
I watched these good movies, Outbreak and Contagiousness or whatever.
Right.
I can't remember who's in it.
That one, that's the one that makes you feel homesick, right? That's the one in Minnesota.
Yeah, well, they had the one lady with the kid who's Apple, and then Matt Damon, I think, was in that movie or something. And then Outbreak, I hadn't watched in a long time with, what's his name from Meet the Fockers? I can't think of his name, but Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman, yeah.
So it was,
that's right, he's in that.
So I did tremendous research.
Yeah.
By watching those movies, let me tell you.
I bet.
I mean, I knew a lot about monkeys, about wet markets, about, going from how it goes from person to person like that. So, unable to come with it. But I am sending resources back.
Okay.
I have a new drone that I'm going to fly over Wuhan.
You and 20 American states.
That's right.
Now that are flying drones over their cities.
That's right. I had to outbid Cuomo and Ned Lement out in Connecticut, and whoever that idiot is in Illinois, I had outbid them for them. Now, by the way, that song sounded like a band I should know.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a wild stab.
Okay.
And say it's Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Ha!
That's it.
Yeah.
That is it. It wasn't what I was originally going to go with today, but
still, it's 17 3/4 right answer.
Yeah, I figured that it's like the most obvious song about money, and I have not done it yet. Our playlist on Spotify, Community Solutions. Songs from or music from the podcast. It's all about good music, so we might as well throw it on there.
Yeah, and here's the thing: the greatest line about money was said by Paul Newman.
Yes,
money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Yeah,
and that's one of the greatest lines in the history of movies. So when I think of money, I always think of The Color of Money. I always think of that movie.
Yes,
and we do have good stuff on Spotfly. Let me tell you something else.
Yes.
You know how you make fun of me in every post you do about how I never know the answers to the... Don't think I don't see that stuff when you put it out there on the blog. Okay? But we might have to... I'm nearing 10% right now.
That's true. That's passing in Minneapolis public schools.
Passing? I'm a valedictorian. So, yeah. Now, Jay... with everybody being in an underground layer right now, and
Yes.
assuming that we're not, you and I were chatting off air about cities that we'd like to visit, cities that we'd like to go back to, cities that I hope that I never go to again. Okay, now just for the audience here, I would say my favorite, if I could say, my favorite places to visit, one would probably be Denver.
Yes.
San Diego would be another. Hate to say it, but I loved Chicago. I very much liked Chicago. They would be three, and I would love to go back to old Dallas, Texas. Now there are where have you gone that you really want to go back to? Now there's more for me, but
Yeah. Wow. Go back to.
yeah, where did you love and you wish you could go back to?
Well, loved Nashville. I would regularly go back there. Obviously in Austin, Texas, both music towns, huge music towns, getting to play there during South by Southwest was amazing. And there's just bands everywhere lining this whole area of their downtown.
Banjos and ukuleles everywhere.
Electric guitars and drums and it was good. It was good. I loved that. I would love to go back to Paris. I enjoyed that.
You've been to Paris?
Yeah.
I've never been across the pond.
Yeah.
No, I would.
As strange as it sounds, I would love to go back to Port-au-Prince, Haiti. As I
remember when you went there.
It's not a vacationer spot at all. It's kind of dumpy, but I loved the people and I loved the work that I was doing there, and I would go.
Disaster relief, right? When you went there, yeah. Really?
Yep.
Now let me put a twist on it this way: where haven't you been that you'd really like to go?
I think I'd really like to go to Tokyo.
Okay. Again, never been across that pond either.
Yeah.
You gonna go to Wuhan right after that?
Yeah. Let's add that to the list.
Tokyo, is that not the largest city by population in the world now?
Might be.
Yeah, it's got to be up there.
That would be good. Going to maybe Kathmandu, Nepal would be fun.
So international travel.
Yeah, I'd like to do a lot of that. I think I've never been to San Diego. I would like to go to San Diego. I would like to go to Honolulu. I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Yeah, it'd be cheaper to go to Japan 4 times, but yeah.
I'd like to go to like Rio de Janeiro, or
Really?
Yeah. I'd like to see some things.
Well, I can tell you that I told you off camera, I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I would like to go through there.
And neither have I.
Then there's all these Civil War sites I'd like to go to. When I was traveling for a living, I went to Tennessee. I went to Fort Henry and Fort Donelson. I don't know if I've said that on the air before. Maybe I have. And I wanted to go to Shiloh, and I didn't realize it was about 150 miles away. Remember, my company wouldn't let me take my rental car that far, so I couldn't do it. I'd like to go to a presidential library someday. Okay. Harry Truman's is one of the ones that kind of stands out for me. I nearly went there one time. It's in Independence, Missouri, which is east of Kansas City, about 40 minutes or so. Okay. So I'd like to maybe go out to Reagan's if I ever go to California, because I just can't stand California. So, a couple other cities. I'd like to go to Hawaii. I'd like to go to New Orleans. I've never been there. I can tell you a few places that, but before I die, I am definitely going to get to Gettysburg, Antietam, and Vicksburg. I want to go to those 3 places.
That would be good.
They're not exactly close to each other.
No. Okay. No, they're not.
And the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well,
that would be one other place. I'm going to stop there because my wish list will just keep going on.
Right, yeah.
Now, I'll tell you a few places I've been to that I wouldn't go again. For all the gold at Fort Knox, I don't think I'd go.
Is Minneapolis on that list?
Top 5. Unfortunately, I know I'll go there eventually. When the Twins start, I'm sure I will.
Yeah.
One of the dumpiest cities I've ever been to is Bakersfield, California.
Never.
When I went there, I was working. I was there for about two or 3 weeks. There was like a fly infestation, some sort of bug infestation. There were bugs everywhere.
Wow.
There were homeless people everywhere. The whole city. I mean, the only place that smelled worse is probably the number one city on my list, which is Gary, Indiana. You drive through there, roll up the windows. I'm just telling you, the place smells. I can't even describe it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a slaughterhouse town or it's a.
Do they have a paper mill? Paper mills smell terrible.
No, I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's just no deodorant. I don't know what the problem is. I'll tell you another bad city is D-Toilet.
I've only been in the airport.
I'll tell you what. There's one very nice part of town, which is where the Lions and the Tigers parks are. No, not in Pontiac. They're not there anymore.
Oh, okay.
The Silverdome's not around anymore. But if you go,
Ford Field is over.
You have Joe Louis Arena.
Yeah.
You have Comerica Field and Ford Field are all downtown, kind of in like this triangle. There's a casino down there.
Okay.
That's all right. You go half a mile away from there. I mean, you're in, South Chicago. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
You won't be around anybody who speaks English. It's just
South Chicago would definitely be on my list of places I don't want to go back to.
It's funny. I said I like Chicago, but I meant north and west, not south.
Yeah, I remember being. I was a kid, growing up in Duluth. As bad as things get in Duluth, it's like you got the drunks that hang downtown by the bars, and that's about it by the Central Hillside there.
Duluth is the Hamptons compared to South Chicago,
and so we took a family trip to go watch the Twins play the White Sox
at Old Comiskey Park.
Oh yes,
yes,
the
old Green
one.
Park. Yeah,
yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, and so
I think of the newer one. It's like 25 years old now, but
yeah. No, it was the old one, and all of a sudden, we're driving through Chicago. My first time remembering like being in Chicago proper. And all of a sudden, you start going through, and there's newspapers in the windows, and now it's like whatever, okay.
Boarded up.
But as a kid, what is going on here, And then
so were your parents like Clark and Ellen Griswold when they did that drive? Look at all this plight, kids.
No, it was pretty much just like, all right. Everybody face forward. Don't look anywhere. We're driving straight through.
Roll up the windows.
We're not stopping for red lights. No, it wasn't that bad, but yeah, as a kid, that's striking to you. And the other thing I remember
you didn't even know existed.
As a kid going to Disney World. And then we took a side trip over to Tampa and did some stuff over in that area. And somehow we ended up in a really seedy part of Tampa. And so I don't like Tampa either.
Really? I'll tell you.
I don't know what was up with our trips and ending up in bad parts of town. But
I don't know, but it's funny as you say that. After the Twins won the series in '87, back in those days, they still trained in Orlando.
Yeah.
That old Tinker Field,
right?
Yeah,
I've been there. Bowl. Yeah, on that trip, I went to Tinker Field.
Oh, okay. See, now that we did that too, so that'd be in '88, and there were some not so great parts of Orlando either.
Yeah, and maybe it was Orlando. It kind of all blended together. It could have been Orlando. Now that I think about it, because we're staying in Kissimmee, and so we weren't right.
Houston Astros used to train there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You've got the nice parts of Orlando, like that, and like Disney World, and
right?
And then 2 miles away,
I remember we were looking for a McDonald's. They didn't have any milk, and it was dark, and
I see.
And there were all sorts of shady businesses.
Well,
yes.
So there you have it, folks. The places we'd like to go.
It was probably Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah, the places we'd like to go back, would never go back, and would like to go to.
Yes.
You heard Jay and I make our bucket list here. Jay, did you happen to catch any of Governor Walz today with his?
Not today.
As we're recording this,
I caught his henchman on Wednesday. Oh, we've got great news. We've got exciting news. What? We're opening the economy again? No. Testing. More testing.
If the governor wanted to take a page out of President Trump's book.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I don't like is the governor takes very few questions.
Yep.
He babbles on and on and on, and like his henchman, what's her name, and the other what's her name, and the other what's his name. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Talk and talk and talk, and it's like, all right, come on. And it's what I want when I see this, okay? And I get this from President Trump, okay? I don't, although I will say this. Play a drinking game, and every time he says ventilator, take a shot. Okay, you won't make it through the press conference, just to warn you, if you want to play that with the president. But I'm always, as funny as this might sound, when I watch the president, I feel reassured, I feel hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to the governor, and I could win the lottery and be in a pissed-off mood after he keeps talking.
Well, keep in mind, this guy is the epitome of Minnesota nice, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to make anybody angry, but yet he's got a plan to keep us shut down as long as possible, but he doesn't want to tell anybody about it.
If his job is not to make people angry, he's not succeeding.
No.
Okay? But you're right. His plan is to stay. First off, we were told we were going to crack down to flatten the curve, quote unquote. Now, Minnesota has been.
There really wasn't a curve.
There wasn't a curve. There still isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
And now this whole thing is testing. You hear every DFLer repeat that from cue cards. Test. We got to test. Why? I don't know. I don't know what testing a bunch of healthy people tells us. Unless you're testing for antibodies.
Right.
I don't know what you're getting out of that.
Well, the ventilator issue seems to be mostly rectified. So now you got to move on to
giving
something
ventilators
else.
away.
Now you've got to move on to something else because I can't complain about that anymore.
Okay, so now we have this massive testing thing. We're going to test and test, and of course that's still not enough.
No.
Now we're going to move the goalposts again. I know that's a lot of people on our side are saying that, but let me tell you something. If there are no metrics to look at, no dates to look. I mean, Jay, this is how bad it's getting. We are hospitals and other healthcare places, and the governor, of course, slobbers all over himself to praise these people all the time, even though his policies are putting them out of work.
Right.
They're furloughing workers left, and Mayo Clinic announced 20,000 people getting furloughed because they're all sitting there waiting for his imaginary patients.
Well, I mean, the people that run the Mayo Clinic aren't getting furloughed. They're happy. They're fine.
Yeah, but ultimately you've got 533,000 people now out of work here in Minnesota, and they're going to be out of work for some time because the way I read this, look, if the governor had any idea what he was going to do, look, put it this way.
Okay.
Imagine the decision to drop the atomic bomb. It's 1945. Okay? And Tim Walz is the president of the United States.
Oh, boy.
I know. Just humor me.
Yes.
And we have a decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan or not. How long? First off, I think we'd still be in World War II if that was going on. But imagine that.
Well.
Imagine the lack of the shots ring out at Fort Sumter.
Yes.
Well, I don't know what we should do. We'll make some models and look at some charts. And if we respond this way, X amount of people are going to die. If we respond this way, I mean, there's a crisis going on at all levels.
Yes.
The media's not helping with the constant fear-mongering. And we look to the governor for, well, I don't, but I think people in general want to hear some details. And I've said this before, until I hear dates that we're opening, until I hear that there's no extension of the stay-at-home BS, the illegal executive orders, the 40 executive orders that he has issued.
Yeah.
Until I hear those things, we are going to be in an indefinite shutdown period.
Yes, that's true. And I'm sorry, but we don't run our country or our state or our cities by executive order. It does not happen by edict. He's not a king. He's not a lord. He is a governor who is subject to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Minnesota. And you get to make executive orders that dictate how the executive branch is run. That's what they're for, not for keeping people in their homes.
You know, these statutes, which I think are questionable that he's working from, really need they need to be worked on if we ever get our freedom back.
Yeah,
but like the goalposts are moved now to where nothing's going to be back to normal until there's 0 cases.
Right.
That's where they've all been moved to. And I'm going to tell you something else too. Do not assume we get a vaccine for this. I mean, we never developed one for SARS. We never developed one for AIDS.
Yeah.
I mean, I know AIDS is not the death sentence that it used to be. We developed things so people can live, but they're not cured.
Right.
So, I mean, don't assume anything's going to happen like that.
Even with the flu. I mean, some people still get it. It's based on last year's mutation, not this year's mutation.
Yeah, which is why a flu shot
been
doesn't
around
always
since
protect
1918.
At least. Maybe since the 1300s with the bubonic one. I mean,
yeah.
I know that came from rats, but
right.
I mean,
well, most of our policies come from rats.
Yeah, true.
Well. Maybe that's related.
But I mean,
Yes.
I told you last week. I mean, I'm more and more depressed every day. I don't. And I mean, the feeling I have for the people who own a hair salon or people who own a bar or restaurant, and here's another thing that really bothers me is he's out there consulting business leaders, supposedly. Who's he talking to? He's talking to major CEOs,
Best Buy,
people who are
Ameriprise Financial.
Right. I mean, he's getting these people are not small businesses.
No.
One bad month and they could go under. I mean, he's talking to multi-zillion-dollar global corporations. That's not a way to handle this. Why doesn't he get off his dead ass and go talk to somebody who owns a bait shop or somebody who owns a campground or somebody who owns something like that? Then you see where his policies, they're on his shoulders.
Absolutely.
He's chosen to do this, and there's just no accountability with it.
Yep.
He always blames. He never takes responsibility. And, he could end this tomorrow if he wants to. But what really angers me is this whole, we can't overwhelm the healthcare system. At the very same time, healthcare workers are being laid off.
Yeah.
So where's all your imaginary patients? He's accounting for more ICU beds than New York, which is not only ridiculous, it's not only impossible, it's totally implausible.
A lot of these guys are still using the same broken numbers that came from that group that was funded by Bill Gates money and
hey, I'd take that any
Soros
day.
money.
I'd take that any day.
Wrong.
I'd take that any day over whatever numbers he's coming from.
That's what numbers he's using. They're so off.
But let me tell you, he has an 18-month model. We can't get 2 weeks right.
Right.
So if we can't do that, how can you run 18 months with any credit? If we had an honest media, they'd be laughing at it.
Yeah.
They'd be pointing out how ridiculous
Well,
it
you know
is.
who are doing the projections.
I don't know who the hell's doing them.
It's the commissioners from the Met Council, the same people that do the projections for the populations here.
Oh, okay.
They haven't been
maybe
right
it was the
since
global
their
warming
inception.
models. Oh, yeah. They were right about Lakeville by accident. That's about it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's... Yeah, anyway, so, I mean...
If it wasn't so tragic, it would be funny.
I tell you what, I can't wait till we don't talk about this subject anymore and we get to other business. But, whether that's interviews or whatever, we'll get to that eventually just for the audience to know. But I'll tell you what, we talked about last week or the week before or whatever, Jay. I get the episodes mixed up sometimes. We talked about the federal...
that was the last episode.
Oh, was that? Okay.
Yeah, the federal and state bailout bills.
I couldn't hear you all that well in China. So, I mean, like I said, and they could have been listening in.
Yeah.
I was worried that that Mao and
Mao, I think, is
Zhou and
dead.
Lai, they might have been. Well, you never know
Well,
over
that's
there.
true. It might be false reporting.
It could be.
Mao could be alive and well.
Yeah, Sun Yat-sen, they all might have been there. I don't know. The Mings.
Right.
Anyway,
Sun Tzu.
I took
They're all there.
I took the liberty of not I couldn't hear you that well because in my cave, I didn't want to rattle anything,
Right.
especially with Trump and Pompeo on the other line. But here's the thing. We talked about that bailout or stimulus and stuff that's probably still coming.
Right.
We haven't even heard how the Fed is printing money and then buying their own money because nobody else will buy it, and nobody wants U.S. Treasury
That's
notes.
absolutely happening, and in fact, the Fed is starting to buy corporate bonds and municipal bonds as well, and it's going to backfire at some point.
Well, how can they do that? What are they going to do? Pay themselves interest?
Yeah, I don't know how it works.
I mean, if I loaned money to myself and then paid myself back, okay, who's where's the dividend going?
Right. We're in dire straits, America.
Well, eventually, I mean, the only country that can assume our debt, I hate to say it, is China. I mean,
well, we'll see about that too, because if some of these countries do what they're talking about doing, suing China and things like that, I don't know how far that would go, but
yeah, I mean, who with the World Health Organization, are they who's the arbiter of that?
Yeah, no.
That's if China were smart, they'd get out in front of it, but they're not smart. If anything, they'll do the opposite.
No.
But we talked about that. But here's a twist, Jay, that we didn't talk about.
Yes.
And that is the implications for the budgets of school districts, city councils, and counties, and what we could be in for. Now, I'm going to stress something that we're going to speculate a lot in this show, but that's what we do because these are not speculations. These are educated. It's kind of like when a doctor testifies under oath, okay, about what happens to somebody who's sick or dies. Their testimony, they're such experts that the testimony is not considered speculation. So when I say we're going to speculate, okay,
we've done our research.
We are the experts, so it's really not speculation. But we're going to raise issues that I really haven't heard raised by anybody in the mainstream media. If they have, I haven't heard them. And the first thing that crosses my mind, okay, this is the first thing.
Yes.
We talk about how what we call it the merry-go-round of money here in Minnesota, and how there's a lot of city, especially school districts, but counties and cities that are dependent on the state of Minnesota for dough. I mean, they do-re-mi. They just are. There's no question about it that they get money, and then there's many different ways that happens. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of different forms of that.
Mm-hmm.
But just as an example here, according to the Tax Foundation, this is taxfoundation.org, and you can look at any state and see their budget situation. And if you thumb down to Minnesota, you'll find that in the first quarter of this year, now keep in mind, that's January, February, and March.
Yes.
Okay, now January and February, we didn't shut down until March 18th, was it? Day after St. Patrick's Day, wasn't that it when we were around there?
Well, I know bars weren't open for St. Patrick's Day,
so
and restaurants,
16th,
remember?
right?
Yeah, that was kind of a big deal for them.
Okay, so listen to this already. The what do you call it? Forecast or whatever, that they always do. They always do two forecasts.
Mm-hmm.
Tax collections were $62 million short of what was expected. Now, you might think in a $45 billion biennium budget that is not, does not
Right.
sound that astronomical. But remember, we've got April, May, and June, quarter number 2.
Yes.
Okay. Now, your income taxes have been pushed back to July 15th. And trust me, if you owe on them, you ain't paid them yet.
Yes.
which might be me. Sales taxes for the first quarter, which are due on April 20th, or were due, have now been pushed back to May 20th. They can be deferred for 60 more days after that.
Yep.
Especially if your business is closed. I mean, you don't have anything to report as far
Right.
as that's concerned. Gas taxes, which I have not seen a study on yet. I've only heard speculation out of the state and the legislature and a few other talking heads. Maybe down 25%.
Well, prices of gas are negative right now.
Yeah, I know. But the taxes stay.
Yeah.
But the point being, people aren't traveling. A lot of people aren't working. Some people are working from home. The gas, I would bet it's 50%. I'd bet there's a 50% reduction.
Yeah.
Now, and not to mention, May 15th is when the first half of the property taxes are due. No idea if that's going to come through or not.
Yeah.
It may to a percentage. If you're not paying on a mortgage right now, because you work something out with your bank, maybe you're not escrowing.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Mine are in escrow. Mine will get paid, but
well, you're dumb enough.
I'm contributing to the state's welfare. So thank you.
Or if you're renting
You're welcome.
and your renters aren't paying right now, then that's money you take and use to pay whoever owns properties.
Right.
And so I mean, it is a mess. And the longer this goes, the bigger the mess it's going to be. So what implications, Jay, does that have now for local governments? Because they don't want to cut expenses. I'd like to know what's going on at school districts right now.
Right.
I mean, is the custodial staff getting paid? Are they there still?
I don't know if they need to be. I mean, the classes aren't going on.
Your grief counselors, how many customers do they have right now? There's not going to be a graduation ceremony.
Right.
No sports going on.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we have a choice. We can stop doing this, but since we aren't, where's it going to lead on the local level? Because to me, the feds we know can print money until the end of time. States, although they have to have a balanced budget, quote unquote, we all know the gimmicks and quirks, and when you count a bonding bill as revenue, we all know that they can find ways to make that go back to the unallotments, and there's always a gimmick or a way that they can kind of get out of that. They got rainy day funds. But what happens at the city, county, and education level?
Right.
And that's where the mystery seems to be.
Well,
you and I have our thoughts, but
right. Well, schools, unfortunately, you think they're closed and they don't have a lot of money flowing out right now because they're not doing a whole lot. Oh, everybody's still getting paid. And so you got salary, you got benefits, you got all of that stuff, retirement. So that's all still flowing like water.
Well, they are, what do you call it, distance learning, right?
Right.
I'd like to know how that works I'd like to know how that works at home. If you got 3 kids and they're in 3 different grades and you got one laptop at home or something, how in the world are you distance learning? How are you teaching all 3?
Right.
Not to mention you're not working, or one parent maybe isn't working. Talk about stress in a household.
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Well, that's what they're saying is, the levels of domestic abuse and suicide and all that kind of stuff going way up because...
all the things kids are going to forget.
Yeah.
You miss school for 6 or 8 months. That's like 10 years to somebody who.
It's okay if you forgot them by the time you're my age, but
True.
I don't remember any of it.
Yeah, those kids got another 81 years though if they have to worry about
Really?
that.
My word.
You set yourself up for it, Jay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know.
I mean, it's got to be tough, and I mean the long-term consequences, the unintended consequences. Not everybody is. I'm all for homeschooling by choice, where a family makes that choice.
Yes.
But when you just become a homeschooler on a Wednesday afternoon. Oh,
there are parents that should not be teachers.
Right, but I can't really blame them though. I can't blame them for, what are you going to do? Teach stuff you haven't run across for in 25 years? I mean, it's got to be pretty brutal.
Right.
So, and the loss of income and all of that on top of it. I mean, and the governor was asked about school in the fall and he won't commit to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really? What is September?
Yeah.
It's 5 months from now,
and
we're not sure if we're going to open or not.
He'd rather not commit than be wrong, so he's just not going to answer it.
Well, I'll tell you, like I said before, that American people aren't going to go for this forever.
Being strung along, no.
Well, not strung along,
They're
but also
already protesting out in the streets.
And it's funny. You see polls out there. Oh, Americans support the shutdown. Blah blah.
No.
Depends how you ask the question.
Right.
I mean, because the question's always asked about the initial shutdown decision.
Yes.
It's like, if you ask the question, well, should we shut down through May, through June, through July, for a year until the Vikings win the Super Bowl, you're going to get a very, very different answer.
Yes.
But the only way you can do it is to not ask the question. So it is deceitful when you see things like that. I think that the angst out there is getting worse by the hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I really don't.
No.
So,
I
think if you just say, look, we're going to school in September. Don't worry. It's going to happen. There's a number of things. I think people would accept it. I think people would say, okay, one more month with the kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
That I can handle. I can't handle the indefinite I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, again, the consequences for school districts could be immense. Could be some people don't go back.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Could be if they do go. Here's another thing that I kind of just came to me. What if they go back and demand social distancing practices?
Yeah.
Oh, class size. You can only have 10 kids in a class because I could totally see that coming.
I could too, especially because they're finding that younger people are getting it.
Well, but younger people are not dying from it.
No, not usually.
I mean, it's going to take quite a case to get a young person. It's really an exception.
Yeah.
And I mean, because, there's some evidence that, thousands. I mean, the New York came out with something yesterday thinking 3 million New Yorkers have already gotten this.
Right.
Because of the antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think way, way more people have got this than we have any idea.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. I don't know what, knowing that, Cuomo knows that, and he doesn't change anything anyway over there. So, I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, but the consequences could be immense in that also, and this may be on the plus side, though, there is a great market out there for virtual learning.
Yes.
I think there's a great appetite for it, too. Does that become something that becomes a norm rather than an exception? Now, there's pros and cons to it, I think, because I do think kids need to be around other kids and things like that. And you're right, some parents should not be teachers. But, are we going to see kids never go back, choosing never to go back?
It's possible, and with homeschooling, I mean, there's a lot of these co-ops that do a great job of bringing kids together one day a week and letting them take classes together and do activities together. And I think that a model like that could be, again, with the social distancing, I don't know exactly how you do that, and I don't know if a church can facilitate that kind of thing even during a shutdown, being it's an essential business, and I don't know. Some interesting things to try and consider, though, because I do believe we're going to have another wave of this in the fall to the winter until they finally have a vaccine and it gets through all the FDA nonsense.
Yes, they do.
You know, it's going to take
But here's
a while.
the thing, Jay. Shutting us down guarantees we will have a second wave of it.
Right.
Because if we don't root it out, we're not rooting it out. We're just pushing it out.
Right.
So
Delaying the inevitable.
now you didn't see Trump today.
No, I did
Because
not.
he had a presentation about they were doing studies on how this may disappear in the warmer weather.
Right.
That it doesn't, if it's 80, 90 degree weather or ultraviolet light, it doesn't sit on surfaces for hours and hours and hours
Right.
like it does indoors. So that may help stop it in the warmer weather. I didn't catch all the details of it, but that was being talked about too. So maybe that will put. The big thing is this going to be gone in September and October? No. Do I think a second wave is coming? I don't know. Not like this. But if you combine it with the regular flu season, I think that's where you have to be a little bit, in the cases of pneumonia and all that, that's where you have to be a little bit more tepid and a little worried. Now, my answer to that is that I think people are smarter now. I think their hygiene is better. I think they are staying further apart from people. I think you can mitigate it without shutting everything down.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think you can do that right this minute. But, I think that when we open, I think it's not going to be possible to close back down.
It's going to be hard.
I mean, you keep hearing people suggest that. Even Waltzy suggested that today. Well, we'll turn the dial up. We may have it's not happening. People are not going to accept that.
No.
You're not going to let people out of cages and then try to cage them back. Go do that. Let your dog out of a kennel and try to put him back in there 30 seconds later. Mm-hmm. That dog's going to take your finger off. Okay, they're not going back in.
Right.
Okay, so that's not possible in my opinion. I just don't think we can walk that back. Now, going back to local government here, you look at, I'm going to use cities as a good example. It's the most basic unit. It's the one we talk about the most. Gas tax is down a ton, and it will be until we can travel, which I don't know when that will be exactly, although I'm going fishing in May no matter what. But that means municipal street aid will be way down.
Yeah.
Now, you might say, well, no big deal. What's the consequences of that? Well, let me tell you what they are. You got potholes and stuff. You've got projects that cities want to do. You're going to see them not get done. You're going to see them assess rather than pay them out of the budget. I don't think you could bond for these projects, but
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't think you can do a muni on a road, but that is one thing where I am really concerned about assessments. I'm really concerned about city staff coming to the mayor and the council saying, well, you know what? We don't have the cash to do this project, but there is an option that we have, and it's called assessing.
No.
And all of a sudden we assess for even maintenance because there's no, we went through this at Crystal in our home base, that it does not have to be a complete tearing up the streets and putting in new ones.
Right.
When they do projects on them, they can assess for that too.
Mm-hmm.
So as assessments is a big one to watch coming up here, especially cities that have a lot of big plans coming up.
And that is important because you have people that all of a sudden are going to be slapped with a huge tax gift, and it could be $3,000-$4,000. It could be more than that if you live on a corner. And these things are unexpected. They are punitive, and we've talked about it before. I mean, these are hidden taxes. You take a look at your property tax levy, and you think, here's what I'm paying for the year, and then assessments are over and above that. It's a surprise. It's hidden until you get the bill in the mail and roll it over onto your property taxes. But it is another method that these cities use to slap you with something that you weren't expecting. So, like bonds, like franchise fees, like TIF districts, and that's and that's where things are really going to get dicey. Is for all of these cities that have extended all of these TIF districts, and counties too, TIF districts, tax abatements, things like that. Those things are going to have some hard-hitting effects. It's just another way that the cities are not able to collect the tax revenue that they need in order to take care of basic services.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned bonding. I mean, we talk a lot on this show about paying cash and how much money, how much hidden taxes are in these 20, 15-year bonds, 20-year bonds, 30-year bonds, and where all that money is kind of hidden in your budget, in your comprehensive annual financial report. Again, cities might just go, okay, well, we can't pay cash for something, man, we'll just borrow it.
Yeah.
Well, we got this rainy day fund. We're going to use it to fund our pension, or we're going to use it to, and they can do anything like that, throw it back in the general fund, and instead of doing the hard thing, which is to furlough people or lay people off or make cuts, they don't want to do that. And then they're going to bond for projects that they otherwise would have paid cash for. And I'll tell you what, why aren't cities, why aren't they doing furloughing and stuff already? I don't think right now there's much need for a community development director or a city planner right now. If they were a private business, those jobs would have been furloughed a month ago.
Right.
I mean, there's just, okay, look, we're not doing anything right now, so...
Government is the last to lay off.
Yeah, well, and I think attitudes would change if government workers suddenly were laid off tomorrow. I think you'd see a different attitude.
Well, and government workers, I mean, it's a totally different deal, There are a lot of businesses that give, like, $2 an hour raises during this time for those that continue to work.
Well, they're super busy, too.
Right, and it helps compete a little bit with the extra $600 that they're getting from unemployment, to try and keep people interested in working. And then you've got government jobs, like in Big Lake, with the liquor store there. They had asked for a $2 an hour raise, and the city wanted to go give them $4. 2 wasn't good enough. These places go over and above what they need to do to keep employees, and it's insane.
It's crazy.
I mean, could we have $2? No, you can have $4.
But I mean, I go back to Park and Rec is kind of shut down right now. Well, why is everybody at Park and Rec there and getting paid?
Right. You need maybe one maintenance guy to go around and clean parks up.
Well, yeah, and then you could
change out the trash cans.
You can keep your director, and then that's it. Yeah. Everybody else should be on furlough right now. Like I said, if that were a private business, they'd all be on furlough.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the firefighters, and I mean, there's certain people you can't let go.
Right.
But for the most part, I mean, and I just love when I hear non-essential workers when it comes to government. And then you tell somebody,
all of them.
You tell somebody who can't make cuts. Well, wait a minute. Last time these non-essential workers didn't show up. What do you mean we can't make cuts? But for the most part, I think cities aren't doing this, and they're gonna resist and resist and resist and resist. Now, here's another thing. What are other consequences that can come out of this? I'll give you a one that maybe people aren't thinking about. About half the cities in Minnesota have franchise fees.
Right.
What do you want to bet? There's a rash from the other half to implement them very soon when this is over, because they're going to say, look, we can't rely on our money from the state. Property taxes were effed up because of what's gone on right now. Mm-hmm. But hey, everybody's still got an electric bill.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's still got a water bill because we sent it out.
We can get a piece of it.
We'll get a piece of all of it.
Yeah.
What do you want to bet? There's a huge increase in cities, or they jack up figuring you're not going to see it,
right?
Because it's $2.50 on your heat bill or whatever.
Right.
So our franchise fee, something you and I have tried to eradicate, and one city in this state has done it. I mean, are we on the lookout to have a rash of franchise fees?
Yeah.
What do you want to bet? City staff will bring it up. They'll go to them and say, this city has them, this city has them, this city has them, this city has them, this city has them. So why don't we have them?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, are we looking at that?
Well, good. You know, they are going to be looking for extra ways to get money, and some of that is going to be franchise fees, other fees at the city. You know, that those could go up.
Permits.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, when you think about other ways they get money too, I mean, we've done shows on sales taxes. Is that something too? Could the legislature relax? Say, look, we're not going to bail you out, but I'll tell you what, you want to go get your own money, we'll relax you don't have to come to us to implement the sales tax.
Right.
Or have a plan, or have a sunset date, or have anything like that. The legislature has to approve all that. And most cases they do. Some cases they don't. Right. And now, you know what? We'll just let you decide. I bet if we did that, 850 cities would all of a sudden have a need for a sales tax. Keep in mind, I mean, these are regressive taxes. Mm-hmm. They hurt lower and middle income people the most.
Yeah.
We are in a situation right now where sales tax revenue is down all around. Because if you look at it, groceries and things like that largely are exempt. So you're not getting sales tax revenue from that. So those common purchases that you make every day that are not groceries or clothes, a lot of those places are closed right now. So, but is a sales tax, is that another thing that we're going to have to monitor sooner rather than later? Because remember, they have to have balanced budgets. Right. And they're not like the state. They can't throw out $1 billion bonding bill and put that on the revenue side of their budget. So, I mean, I know we're talking a lot about next year's stuff for cities because they passed budgets, but they're not going to get the money that they think that they were going to get.
No, there's going to be a shortfall this year.
Yeah, so, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, you can always put off a project till next year, but ultimately, they're going to want to fix this long term. They're going to want to say, look, I don't want to get into a situation where we're dependent on the state to send us money every year, where we're dependent on property taxes to come in on May 15th, even though that's what you and I would like to see, because I don't like it when government has 97 ways to pick your pocket. But are we going to see sales taxes along with franchise get nailed somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so. And this is why it's important for all of you to go to your comprehensive annual financial report for your city and take a look at what your city has in cash and investments, because they're going to tell you they don't have money, and then if you tell them, oh, you do have money, they're going to say, well, we can't move that from this bucket or that bucket for this reason or that. We are in extraordinary times right now, and they need to take a look at moving some of that money around. You might be saving up for, a park or a hockey arena, but guess what? You might need to use that for roads, because we're in a time of emergency. And if you guys want to say we're in a state of emergency, like a lot of you mayors and city councils are, well, then guess what? You might need to free up some funds for frivolous things and pay for it out of money that you have, rather than taking and bilking your residents for more.
So on the plus side, would it lead some cities to say, look, we want these amenities, but it just ain't happening.
Right. We can wait another 3 years.
Yeah, or we need to find a way to make it cheaper, or we need to choose between this and this, not both.
Right.
Because, I mean, some amenities are, not all amenities are evil.
No.
Or, I mean,
and if the public want an amenity in their city,
and they're willing to
God
pay
bless
for
you.
it,
yeah,
and they understand up front what it costs, including interest.
Yeah.
What it costs to maintain.
Well, hopefully there isn't any interest. Hopefully the city decides, okay, we're going to start putting money away for this, and we'll build it when we have money.
Let's hope.
Yeah. But, yeah. This is government. So,
yeah, I mean, not to mention names, Newell, but there are things like that.
Yes.
And, I'll tell you what. I mean, one of the things talked about, too, are pension funds. I mean, we all know what it's like here in Minnesota, where you have the public employee retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it would spark a debate about getting out of those things and going into 403Bs and 401Ks
Right.
and what we call a defined contribution plan. Get out of a defined benefit plan. Same thing with school districts.
Mm-hmm.
They're police office. They're largely on these old-fashioned pensions, that were viable in the 50s. And they're eradicated completely out of the private world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't find a pension anywhere in the private sector nowadays. Somebody might have one who's 90 that is retired, but a lot of them aren't around anymore. So I mean, and this is the whole thing about things like GM and how they were bailed out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was all the retirements.
Right.
That was where the deficit was. And if they'd have gone through bankruptcy, the judge would have come in, canceled all those. This is what happens in bankruptcy court.
Right.
It's not the worst thing in the world. They come in, they cancel bad contracts, and they redo them. Mm-hmm. Southwest Airlines went through this and got out of all these ridiculous defined benefit packages and went into a defined contribution. But you bail out something like General Motors, 10 years later, they're in the same place that they were 10 years earlier.
Right.
I mean, General Motors is basically a healthcare company that makes a few cars. And I mean, I am seriously worried, though, about bailouts of state and local government, because if you go bail out New York and California, who were in trouble to begin with.
Right. This disease did not cause that.
No, it exacerbated it,
Yeah.
but it didn't cause that. You give them no incentive to change what they're doing.
Right.
So if you
and you got like California now, it's like they want to give all this money to illegal aliens. Well,
a lot of money.
How about you pay your bills? There's a novel concept.
Or they can forego a windmill project or something. I mean, they could. Again, that's the thing. People in government don't want to make hard choices. They want to say yes to everybody.
Yeah.
And that just leads to satisfying nobody. So, but I mean, I am concerned that something like this is going to happen. That something, even though you hear from the people in the federal government that they're not going to do it. We heard today from Senator McConnell, somebody I don't really trust. President Trump reiterated it, but my concern is that it's going to get lumped in to some bill, some infrastructure bill or something like that, like we just talked about with the coronavirus bill. Mm-hmm. And somehow the money's going to trickle down to the state, and trickle down to the cities, and they're going to get propped up and then not change anything that they do business on.
And federal money always has strings attached to it.
Yeah. But, I mean, how much money, again, do you lose by sending money to Washington, have them send it to St. Paul, and have St. Paul send it to a school or a county or something like that?
Right.
Pennies on the dollar you're getting for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a stupid thing to do anyway, but I can see some cities acting responsibly and reevaluating everything, and I can see some cities running out for new revenue. Mm-hmm. I can see some cities panicking and borrowing and like you said, not using their rainy day funds for some amenity that nobody needs, being reluctant to furlough anybody even for a week or two.
Yeah.
I mean, I can really see that happening, and you've already seen places like City Lab, places like the League of Minnesota Cities, who are already putting out clamors that they're going to need a bailout. And what every time we have a recession, is there going to be a bailout?
Well, yes, and this is what Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are already talking about. Version 4 of the Corona bailout needs to be for cities, for school districts, for
states.
Yes.
Well, them being from probably the two worst culprit states.
Yeah.
of
exactly.
anywhere.
Yeah, their states could really use it.
But I've been saying also from the beginning, who's paying for all these tests? Who's paying for all these ventilators? Who's paying for the all this stuff for all this personal protective equipment? Where's that coming from? I mean, are the states paying for part of it? Are the feds printing money and buying it and then buying that? Are are the hospitals paying for part of this? I mean, nobody seems to give a straight answer to that.
Right.
Okay, we're going to make 5 billion masks. Well, who's going to make 5 billion masks? Yeah. Who's buying them? What do they cost?
Right. Are we buying overinflated ones from China? Yeah.
Well, and I tell you what, it brings back up stuff that you and I have talked about not having a manufacturing base here. And if anything, I mean, this has shined a light on that you can't have all of your stuff made by a country that doesn't like you.
Right.
And we're stuck in that because we've sold out to these globalist corporations. I know you and I don't quite see eye to eye on trade, but I'm one that feels you can't have free trade with an unequal partner.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, and yes, I'm still against Smoot and Hawley. Okay, so we're the same. You don't raise tariffs in the middle of a depression, but our lack of forward thinking. I mean, we talk about being ready for a pandemic or something. How about where all this stuff gets made? Period.
Yeah.
Forget whether we stockpile it or borrow it or whatever the hell we do. The fact that we don't even make I've said this before, we don't even make some of the weapons to defend ourselves.
Right.
Which I don't know how you can be an independent nation if you don't make the weapons that you're defended with. So I mean, everything from prescription drugs to PPE or whatever it's called now, things like that. How about stopping the education program that we give to Chinese citizens to come over here and go to school for free? I mean, how about stopping that? They take the stuff and go back to China.
Yeah.
Now, how does that benefit us? I don't understand it. So, I mean, a whole thing is. I mean, I thought trade was the issue back in 2016 that nobody was talking about that was making a difference, and I think it did. And I think that you're gonna hear that. You're gonna hear almost nothing but that as people go back to work and the economy goes back up and people's angst goes back down. Hopefully, we're gonna have a national debate about China.
Yeah. Well, I'd kind of like people's angst to stick around until November 4th.
Well. Yes, but
then be free and happy.
But the president needs to get back in his element.
Yes, he does.
Getting out campaigning, and I think it stinks that he can't do that right now because that's where you really see the difference between him and Biden. I mean, you really see the voter enthusiasm gap is there big time. But, I mean, to me, the vice president, the former vice president's got a lot to answer for when it comes to, he spent 50 years and you can't point to anything he's done to stop things from going over to China. He's going to have to answer for that.
Right.
And I don't know what he's going to say. What's he going to say?
Well, one time back in 1932, me and Slappy McGee were...
back in the Hoover days. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where it goes, but I think like I said, Trump's got those commercials all in a box. He's just waiting to get them out there. And he's put out one good one already on Biden on China, and I think Biden on China is... And again, whoever can lay out a plan to make stuff here, hire Americans, pay a decent wage, I think this is going to do very, very well. I think that message will get out there very well. But tell you what, the president has got to get back out campaigning because when he's out campaigning, he's doing well. I don't think he's comfortable having this everyday firestorm with the media. I mean, I find it the best thing on television, but I don't think it's helping him a whole lot. I think he's got to get He's got to get back out there, and I think he will.
I think so too. And then you have other things that work in his favor. I mean, number one, Joe Biden being Joe Biden and his crazy conferences that he's holding from his basement. And
let's be blunt here: the Electoral College favors the Republicans. I mean, let's just be honest; it does.
Yeah, and then you've got like AOC, who is telling people you need to not go back to work when we open up. What?
And Biden has moved to the left, which is not smart because the whole premise for him from the beginning has been that he isn't that.
Right.
And he undermines that every single day. And I think you're going to see everything right size in a couple of months once the summer comes and the president's back in his own element. But like I said, the path for him is still wide open in my book. With the Electoral College, I still think it favors the president. I still think he can drop several states, even that he won, and still he can't be beat. So I don't know how a message of the Green New Deal and things like that, I don't know how that sells to people in Michigan or Pennsylvania. I don't get it. So, but I think once that becomes more stark, like I say, you're going to see a change in there.
Right.
Back to the cities. Okay, I mean, if the cities do get a bailout, how does that look? Like, put it to you this way. Does the federal government send money to the states, and then the states send money to? I mean, federal government going to write a check to Robbinsdale?
I don't foresee that. They'll probably write it to the states to dole out as they see fit. And if it's anything like LGA,
there's no accountability right there.
If it's anything like LGA, Minneapolis will end up with most of it, and everybody else will split it up.
They may just add that money to that formula. As I could totally see them doing that.
Yeah.
So I mean, all 50 states are going to get a chunk of money. That was. I'd like to know what the budget deficit is right now for this fiscal year.
Not me.
I would really like to see it.
Ignorance is bliss, baby.
You've got revenues, GDP might be fall 20% this quarter, depending on when we all get back to work. And then you've got $2 trillion bill. You got another one being talked about. You've done 2 rounds now of loans or grants or whatever you want to call it to businesses. That's $5 trillion. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think we're at for fiscal year 2020, which ends on September 30th of this year? The federal budget starts October 1st. Where are we, do you think, in overall budget? The old Jim Sasser used to say, budget deficit.
Yeah.
Where are we on that deficit? Pretty bad, aren't we?
It's bad. Yeah. It's not gonna be pretty.
Well, do we ever? I mean, I wonder if we'll ever have a balanced budget again. I mean, we haven't had one since I want to say 1998-ish.
I don't think we will. As long as we're employing modern monetary policy, where you can just print it. Then no, there's no need for a balanced budget. We'll just print it.
Right, but there's 2 consequences to that. One, there's a million.
Terrible.
There's a million consequences. But if you, every time we're going to have a recession, if we have a bailout, okay, that means. Remember what happens in a recession: revenues go down, expenses go up.
Yeah.
Okay, so then to fix that, we're going to print money.
Yep.
Which, like we talked about previously in previous episodes, inevitably that loses its value. You can't, whether it's the continental dollar, whether it's, pick your example.
Yeah.
There is never an example anywhere where you increase the money supply. First off, there's natural inflation just as it is.
Yes.
Okay? Because people's cost of living goes up, wages, whatever. So you're going to have inflation naturally.
Yeah.
So now you're going to add to that. And then I'm going to tell you something. We never let a recession run its course. Recessions happen for reasons.
Yes.
Not this one necessarily, but people make bad choices. Companies make bad choices. Things go up and down in the economy, whether that's, you go back to the .com thing. You go back to the savings and loan stuff in the 80s, go back to old stagflation under Jimmy Carter.
Right.
There's reasons recessions happen. And if every time that happens, we're going to have a bailout, nobody's going to change their behavior.
Exactly.
So every 9 years or whatever it is on the average that we seem to have something, you go back to, the 70s, you go back to the early 90s, you go back to around 9/11, you go back to 2009, you go back to now, which is about a 8, 9, 10 year gap every time. We're going to not only expect a recession, we're going to expect a bailout. We're going to demand one.
Right.
So is that where we're at now? That's going to happen every single time?
Yeah, I don't know. There are things that I understand. When it comes to business being forced to shut down, the government is taking something, and I can see where that fits into the takings clause, where government owes those business owners something because they're taking something.
It's no different than taking their property and not paying for it.
I get that. But when we're starting to go into territory, this business isn't doing well, we need to prop them up, that's different. That is artificial. That can't last. You go back and look at the Great Depression and how much longer that carried on because of the policies that FDR implemented. Yeah. It didn't have to be as long as it was.
Sometimes I wonder how he got reelected.
I know.
Nothing like a good war to stimulate the economy.
Right.
It really didn't end until 1941.
Yeah.
The way we define recessions today and how we take GDP quarter by quarter, hiring and all that, and unemployment rates, we were in a depression for 11 years we were in a depression.
Right. And in part of that, there was a depression within the depression.
Yes. Right. We recovered a little bit, went down again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And then the dependence on government and the social stuff on top of it. But I'll tell you what, some days, I wish I could have watched baseball back then, but there are a lot of days I'm glad I wasn't out selling apples.
But is it any different? Right now it's essential businesses. Back then it was the Blue Eagle.
Yeah. It was.
Is it any different?
National Recovery Administration.
Is it any different?
No, because, again, if a business succeeds or fails for whatever reason, you can't run to government to bail them all out, because then how do you pick which businesses you're going to bail out, which businesses you aren't? Mm-hmm. I always come back to that. How do you make that choice? How do you say this person's job or whatever is more important than that? You ask that family, every one of those jobs is important.
That's my point exactly. To a business owner, to an employee, every business is essential.
Well, and we just went from, we used to consider 5% unemployment. We used to consider that full employment.
Yeah.
Okay. We were at 3 point
I know.
something about 2 months ago,
Yeah.
And we're talking right now, we're talking, if this goes on another month, we're talking 30%.
Yeah.
Which is, I will say this, that is higher than the Great Depression.
Yes, it is.
So, that's...
Granted, we don't have the Dust Bowl on top of it and all that.
No, we don't, but,
Yet.
Look, at some point we're going to have a food shortage.
Oh, it's already going to happen by the end of April. There's a bunch of chicken plants, chicken processing plants, beef processing plants,
Pigs.
pork processing plants that are shutting down or have shut down, and it will affect the meat supply.
And prices.
Or not. And prices
on top of it.
Absolutely. And you got governors like Governor Whitmer in Michigan that won't allow you to buy seeds to grow your own food. You tell me that's not essential?
Yeah. Yeah, but selling lottery tickets is.
Right. Or out in Washington, where Inslee has made it, I think it's Inslee or it's the mayor of Seattle, I don't remember, but fishing is illegal. How
can you do that on a port city like that?
Like you don't social distance when you're fishing? You're going to hook somebody if you're too close.
That might be one of the best social distancing activities there is.
I know.
Well, it's Michigan, too. You can't fish in Michigan either.
Oh, you can if you're using a non-motorized boat. You can't use a motorized boat.
What?
Yes.
What's wrong with a motorized boat?
I don't know. do you sit closer when there's a motor on the boat?
No, but you go faster.
Right. You can get away from people.
What do you got to
quicker.
row out there in a piece of cardboard to go fishing?
Yeah. Hey, you in the dinghy.
Yeah. You in that canoe over there. Little cheese raft. I don't know. I mean, it's just silly. And yeah, there's going to be shortages of, people say that there aren't, but there are, because you can't keep it stocked the way it is.
Right.
And the farmers, they're in a crunch too, because again, remember, farmers are land rich.
Yeah.
Not rich.
Right.
So any change in these things, and you're going to see a reaction that comes with it.
And they're pouring out milk like it.
Yeah, people they don't go to the grocery store that much. They're not buying as much
gallons
milk.
upon gallons upon gallons of milk. Well, the grocery stores, I think, are doing okay, but it's all the schools that aren't providing milk. It's all of the
restaurants that aren't buying.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So, and that's the thing too. How do you expect restaurants to stay open and offer curbside stuff when they don't know how much supply to have?
Right.
It's impossible to do that. They might be busy, they might not be.
Mm-hmm.
So, where do you go?
Where's the new normal? Where it's a guessing game, and that's why we find out. There are places like Chipotle that seem to constantly be running out of Mexican Coke or this kind of juice, or you have other restaurants that are running out of this and running out of that because they don't know. Sometimes they're super busy. Sometimes they're not busy at all.
Yeah, and food's got an expiration date. It can only sit in the fridge for so long.
You've got Perkins, who has decided to try and make more money during this time. They're going to sell bacon. They're going to sell eggs. They're going to sell toilet paper. They're going to.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Wow, they've seen a sign in front of the different Perkins around here that come and get that stuff here. That you can order it online and go pick it up.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think creation is going to be what saves some of these businesses getting creative, but we've really got to watch the regulation because they are at the state level, at the local level, they are going to kill innovation if they keep it up.
Of course they are. It's an essential business, but we won't let them make what they can and employ who they can. You got to kill that on top of it. And I'll tell you what's scary is, and this was predictable, is shutting down and government not wanting to open up. And we're seeing that. And we're seeing, again, the red and blue state divide, how whether it's Georgia, whether it's Tennessee, whether it's South Dakota, whether it's South Carolina, whether it's Texas, where they've had a lot of cases, and the governor there is opening anyway. Just saying, look, we've mitigated it as much as we can, and we're going to continue to do so, but we have to let people make a living. Even Florida, which really the hot spots are down in Miami, but if you look at the rest of the state, it's very, very different. And Governor DeSantis is allowing, they talked about the beaches being open in Jacksonville. He has allowed some of those local people to make that call and say, I'm not going to put a one-size-fits-all policy here. If you think the beaches can open up, I'm going to let the county decide to do that.
Yes.
And so that's an interesting approach, too. You look at Minnesota, and there's tons of counties that have not had one death from this, and they're still shut down. And it's sort of like, come on here. At what point does this become... If I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, am I really concerned about, the hospitals getting overrun when there's 300 Eskimos living in the whole area? Come on, it's become silly.
Yeah, that Alaska has a stay-at-home order, really?
I think they're letting theirs expire, but
they better, because everybody is spread out in that state.
I know, it's just nuts. So I'll tell you what really concerns me, and you and I need to do some research on this, is these states kind of banding together and trying to work with one another. States can't do that. They cannot sign a treaty. They cannot do anything without the legislature's okay. They cannot
Right.
band together and do this. This is very a constitutional problem because, it's a pact to do nothing. Minnesota joins a pact with Kentucky.
Yes.
What's Kentucky got in common? No offense, I love the state.
Yes.
What's it got in common with us?
Well, me.
Yeah, just because your Iroquois Indians are from there, is that the whole reason?
I'm half Kentuckian myself.
Which half?
My dad's half. He was born and raised there.
Oh, I like Kentucky. It's a good
Yeah,
state.
I love it.
So, all right, fine. You okay? So we got you in
Yes.
common. All
Isn't
right?
that enough?
I guess it is now.
I mean, it's like, it's like the gift.
They brought you down from a mountain there on the Appalachians there.
Oh.
Yeah, but I mean, these pacts have to be scrutinized here. The idea that we're going to wait around for Michigan to open up, or we're going to wait around for Illinois.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. What is Walz doing, banding together with Michigan and Illinois, who are both in the top 10 for states with COVID cases, and we're nowhere near that, but we're going to go along with them.
yeah, notice it wasn't North Dakota, South Dakota,
Right.
and Iowa.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause North Dakota's announced they're opening May 1st, too.
Yeah.
They're not extending. The governor won't extend the stay-at-home up there.
Yeah.
And you look at Wisconsin, there's another state where half the counties could probably open up. You've got a hot spot in Milwaukee and in the first-ring suburbs.
Yeah.
And that's where, it's the same way here in Hennepin County. And you've
Yeah.
got the rest of the state pretty much unaffected by it.
Right.
And why don't the policies change?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, you have Democrat governors working together to try and undermine President Trump,
Yes.
and you have this joining together because if they are lockstep with each other, they feel like they shelter one another, but they really don't. I mean, look at all the protests.
Well, I feel like they don't think there's any consequences for them if they just spread the fear.
Right.
And what's interesting is Ohio is in that pact, and Governor DeWine laid out a whole opening plan starting on May 1st,
Yeah.
but nobody else in this pact is doing it. And Ohio's up there; they're in the top dozen themselves.
Yeah.
And he's laid out a whole plan to open next week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a gradual one, but Ohio's had a
Right.
lot of cases. So
We're not going to open.
but
We're
they're
not doing it.
They're not paying. He's not paying any attention to what's going on in Michigan or I don't know why Ohio's in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tell you what, Michigan, there's a rays of hope though, and same in Wisconsin because both houses of the legislature are Republican.
Yeah.
And in Michigan, there is some loopholes in the emergency powers.
Uh-huh.
There's two different acts, one in 1945 and one in 1976.
Mm-hmm.
And one is where the governor is sort of stretching,
Yeah.
and the other one, I can't remember which, is more specific. I think she's going to be forced. I don't think she can just extend
Yeah.
and extend and extend and extend. And I mean, in Wisconsin, they're suing the governor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to have to give in at some point. So they don't have the support there. So it'd be interesting to see. They may actually open quicker than we think because they just may not have a choice. So
Wow.
yeah, rough times. I mean, you'd like to think everybody is understands that you can't quarantine the healthy forever and not expect them to get pissed off about it.
No. Quarantine is for the sick, not for the healthy. So maybe you're a lot like us out there and you are just frustrated as can be with the way that this is going. You're ready to get moving, get going, put your shoulder to the wheel and do some work, and you just can't. and it's frustrating, and you can feel alone, and you can feel helpless, and you can feel like you're not able to do what you were made to do, and as people, there's something that burns in our heart, and if we don't feel like we have a purpose, if we don't feel like we are out there doing that thing that we were made to do, it takes a toll on us. We get depressed. We are kind of a shell of ourselves. We get scared. The time is now. And these protests that are going on, they're a beautiful thing. And that's what the First Amendment is all about. And they tell you can't go to church, you can't congregate, you can't associate, you can't petition your government. Well, guess what? No, we can. Try and stop us. There are 340 million of us. Try and stop us.
Yeah, you'd be glad to know California has banned protests.
Good luck with that one. Yeah, good luck with that one, banning protests. Yeah, that's not tyrannical at all, Andrew. Not tyrannical at all. Up in their ivory towers, they don't want to hear your voice. They don't want to hear your voice. Tim Walz doesn't want to hear your voice. Your mayor and your city council don't really want to hear your voice. They have their plans. They know what they want to do, but you know better because you have to live it every day. You know where your family finances are at. You know what your work situation is. You know what your family situation is. You know which people in your family are stressed out, which are fearful, which are tired. But guess what? There is hope on the horizon. There is a sun rising that will not set, and it is called freedom. It is called American ingenuity. It is called our desire to win, to not be held down by tyranny of the government. So what are you going to do about it? Yes.
By the way, the Vikings chose Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU, with their pick. You know who he is?
No.
That's George's great-grandson.
Really?
George Jefferson.
You interrupted my monologue for that.
Yes, it's George Jefferson's great-grandson. George Louisi.
The longer these podcasts go, the more they devolve into chaos. Oh, boy.
That's who the Vikings got. We got George Jefferson's grandson. Great-grandson.
Okay. We'll see how that works out.
Anything to play the Jeffersons theme song.
That's
I'm
all right.
For that.
You interrupted my monologue for that.
Yeah, I wasn't listening anyway.
Yeah, what else is new? What else is new, Andrew?
Again, here's the thought of the day. Just think. I have my disagreements with President Truman. He's one of the Democrats I respect, though, as a president. Imagine Tim Walz having to decide the Berlin airlift, having to decide to use the atomic bomb, decide to fire General MacArthur.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine first off, we'd still have East and West Germany. Mm-hmm. We'd still be in World War II, and Douglas MacArthur would still be in charge over there in Korea. He'd still be alive because he'd still have a lot of power. So that still would be going on if Tim Walz were president instead of Harry Truman.
There we go.
We elect the right people nationally at the right time sometimes. It's just thank goodness that Tim Walz was not president when the shots rang at Fort Sumter or when we lost the Battle of Bunker Hill or whatever. Just thank goodness that he was not there.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Was it Bunker Hill we lost? I don't know.
But you know what?
Something
we got new challenges, America, and you can be there. It's an election year. So what are you going to do? Are you sick and tired of staying in your house? Are you sick and tired of not being able to work? You sick and tired of not being able to earn a living for your family? It's time. It is game time. So you get a hold of us. COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. That is COMMsolutionsMN@gmail.com. We have taught people how to run an effective campaign and win, and we can do it for you if you're a serious candidate. you get a hold of us, and we will teach you everything that you need to know to run an effective and competitive campaign. And hey, we've got a pretty dang good batting average. So we want to hear from you. All right? Take what we've said today. I know, a longer podcast, but hey, you've got nothing better to do. You're trapped in your house.
We have nothing better to do either.
I got a lot of things to do. I'm not sitting down and taking this. I'm busy. I'm making the engine of this economy go all on my own if I have to. All right.
That's right, you're stocking those shelves. That's where you're going after this.
What? My goodness.
Let's go, Bradley. Get those bananas and blueberry baskets out there. Produce.
I don't know if I could ever work for another company again. I like being self-employed. Can I just say that?
You're pretty stubborn. Eh?
Yeah, I am stubborn. I know what I want. And I hope you know what you want, America, because it is time. Make a decision. Get a hold of us. You know where we are. Until we see you again next week, we love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too caught